So this is the review for collisions regulations, how to avoid collisions, particularly when using the automatic radar plotting aid, the ARPA. So first, we will cover rule number 4, applications. So rules in this section apply to all any condition of visibility. This section applies to all vessels and under any condition of visibility, that is good visibility as well as when under poor visibility, whatever the cause may be. With rule number 5, the lookout, every vessel shall at all times maintain a proper lookout by sight and hearing, as well as by all available means appropriate in the prevailing circumstances and conditions, so as to make a full appraisal of the situation and of the risk of collision. Lookout is very important and should take about 70 to 80% of the watch keeping officer's time. So you need to really put time in this activity. The rest are to be the full appraisal of what he sees and the action that is taken by him. Lookout is also for getting the feedback on the action that he or the other ship took to avoid the collision or avoid the situation. Lookout means to see and understand the situation by sight and hearing, as well by other means, which may be by radar and GPS and by any other electronic devices appropriate in the prevailing conditions. So appropriate in the prevailing circumstances. In any condition of poor visibility, the radar and ears may be the only means of detecting other vessels. Here again, the range scale selection should be appropriate. If the vessel is in the middle of a fishing fleet, there is no point in keeping a watch on 12 nautical mile range and only on one radar. So if two radars exist, then one should be set on a smaller range and the other on 12 nautical miles for detecting other vessels. If only one radar is available, then periodic switches have to be done between a smaller scale and a longer scale. So in any case, the echo sounder, the log, the GPS, and the chart and vessels charted positions have also to be monitored. Because for a full appraisal of the situation, all factors have to be taken into consideration. Can the own vessel alter to keep out of the way, or is it better to slow down? So which is which? So as a summary, it applies to any condition of visibility. That's for rule number 4. With the lookout, always maintain proper lookout, use all available means, and even you can use your AIS for obtaining additional information. Or don't forget to use the binoculars also from time to time if the necessity arises. And lookout also is required at anchor. So let's go to rule number 6. That's a safe speed. So every vessel shall at all times proceed at a safe speed so that she can take proper and effective action to avoid collision and be stopped within a distance appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions. So basically, a very difficult statement. Safe speed. So any vessel which is sailing has some speed and it can cause destruction to others as well as to itself. If the speed is very low and the current is strong, she may drift onto any other ship. So a low speed is out under these circumstances. If the speed is great and if the steering fails, then she would move away from her course line into a danger very fast without maybe even an emergency being realized. So a safe speed means that the ship sails at a speed at which if any emergency occurs, she would come out of the emergency without anybody getting injured. The basic fact is that under any circumstances, uh, the speed should be such that the vessel can take effective or avoid action to avoid danger. This includes maneuvering to keep out of the way or slowing down or stopping to allow another vessel to pass clearly. So in open sea, a slowdown or stopping may not be required, and a maneuver in good before closing in, maneuver in good time would be fine. But if the sea passage is narrow or the depth is less than or depth if, is less, then the main engine should also be at standby. Also, if the current is strong or the visibility is poor, then in open sea, the main engine may be required to avoid since the time of observing the vessel may be reduced. It is likening to a person running on a racetrack, which is brightly lit. So he runs at his maximum speed. So place the same person in a forest at night and then ask him to run. Obviously, he would run taking into consideration that he may hit a tree or a branch or fall in a ditch. Depending on how well he is seeing, he adjusts his speed. So in determining a safe speed, the following factors shall be among those taken into account. So by all vessels, you need to take into account the state of visibility. The visibility, if the visibility is affected by any condition, then adequate precautions should be taken and that he may be required. The helmsman should also be standby, and if permissible, the standby steering motor switch on. The traffic density including concentrations of fishing vessels and any other vessels. So if the traffic density is heavy and a lot of ships are moving around, then the main engine has to be on standby, since the vessel may have to take emergency measures to avoid danger. The alteration of courses may not be possible due to other vessels in the vicinity. The maneuverability of the vessel with special reference to stopping distance and turning ability in the prevailing conditions. So this relates to the peculiar maneuvering characteristics of different vessels. A large, fully laden tanker may have stopped her engines after being on full ahead. She then takes emergency action to stop the vessel by going emergency full astern. But the momentum of the vessel is such that she would come to a full stop condition only after traveling a further distance of maybe a mile. A smaller cargo vessel or the same tanker on ballast in such condition may have stopped in the water in a distance of maybe less than that quarter of a mile. Again, a large tanker fully laden will take a lot of time to initially begin her turn after the wheel is put hard over. And once the vessel starts her swing, she keeps swinging. And to stop her swing, it takes a lot of time, wherein the ship may have done a near 360 turn and landed up in another critical situation. A smaller vessel or the same tanker on ballast may not have such problem. So next would be at night, the presence of background lights such as from shore lights or from backscatter of her own lights. So this one refers to the state of visibility. A vessel, when she leaves port, is surrounded by a lot of bright lights, bright shore lights, and her navigation lights may be cluttered up with these lights. A lookout on another vessel would not be able to see the vessel departing the port until she comes to a position where the background is dark. The second case refers to backscatter of her own lights. Backscatter of ship's lights is the effect of a brightly lit ship, say at anchor or at sea, with the bridge front portholes not covered. So you need to cover up your portholes. The light which emanates from these sources pick up the microscopic particles of the atmosphere, and they are seen as a filter before an observer's vision. In cases where this filter is bright, it may obscure a distant vessel's navigation lights, and lookout may detect the vessel when she is quite close. The state of the state of wind, sea, and current, and the proximity of navigational hazards. So in rough weather with high winds and waves, it is difficult to quickly alter the course of a ship. The wind and or the waves prevent or haste the alteration as such. The helmsman used to giving a particular helm to alter a course may find that the ship is either does not turn or turns very slowly. The correcting helm also is different than usual. So that depends upon your wind, the sea and current, and proximity of navigational hazards. The draft in relation let's go back. So also when we talk about current, it makes the ship behave in the same manner as with the high winds. So a danger mark or shallow patch, proximity of navigational hazards, would cause a vessel to later course less than is required as such. The need for a ship to be within manageable speed where she can be brought out of one danger without her landing up in another difficult situation. So let's go to the draft in relation to the available depth of water. So as stated previously, the draft in relation to the depth of water, a deep drafted vessel under these circumstances has to take special precautions in maintaining her speed. Her draft is more, thus the sea room available for her to take effective action to avoid a close quarter situation has to be affected with the main engine performance. Speed thus has to be controllable, and the ship is, if required, has to be stopped short of danger. So additionally, by vessels with operational radar. So today, this refers to practically all ocean-going vessels. When it is stated that the vessel has a radar, it implies that the radar is fully functional and may be used to keep a radar watch. So, and a good radar lookout can be kept on it. So the characteristics, the efficiency, and limitations of the radar equipment. So a functional radar may not be operating at its peak performance. Maybe the magnetron has become old, or the center of the PPI is burnt out, or any other causes while the radar has got peculiarities which are readily apparent to a new observer but may be overlooked by an old ship hand. The mast and the funnel cast radar shadows, and for a particular ship, the watchkeepers have to take that into consideration. These peculiarities may, in emergencies, cause other vessels not to be tracked by radar. Any constraints imposed by the radar range scale in use. So sometimes a radar may be fully functional and good, but it may have a defect that is uh, it may not detect vessels at a certain range, or may not very may not very good be very good at low ranges or on higher ranges. So you need to take that into account also. The effect of radar detection of the sea state, weather, and other source of interference. Clutter, a nuisance, especially when it is least wanted. Rain clutter is the raindrops sending their reflection back to the observer, who is more interested in detecting the ships. Rain clutter may completely obscure an entire region of the horizon on radar. Thus, any ships within that particular region will not be detected. Increasing the rain clutter control on the radar will reduce the rain clutter, but will also remove weak targets. Sea clutter is another hazard. This is a more affecting around the proximity of the ship than rain clutter, but the effect is the same. Uh, is the same. The vessels, especially small, or when the aspect is poor, are obscured. So other sources include soot from the funnel, which can seriously impair the performance of the radar. So the possibility that small vessels, ice, and other floating objects may not be detected by radar at an adequate range. Every modern radar has a selective clutter control, where the logic is that the microprocessor within the radar, once it detects a target, predicts the next position of the target. If the target fails to appear, it removes the target. Of course, this sequence is not in one sweep, but in about 5 sweeps. Thus, a small vessel, if it appears if it appears consistently, then the radar will not detect it. For ice, it is different. The ice reflects the EM wave in a direction that is not toward the scanner and is thus lost. An observer does not see the ice. The number, location, and movement of vessels detected by radar. So, in areas of high traffic density, keeping track of what each ship is doing and also assessing the ship with the most potential risk factor is an exacting task. However, with a radar tracking unit or an ARPA, the same can be achieved very easily. The only carefulness that has to be exercised is that the risk factor set data is presented by the radar should be evaluated, and an understanding of the situation has to be done. So the more exact assessment of the visibility that may be possible when radar is used to determine the range of vessels or other objects in the vicinity. So earlier visibility was estimated by guesswork. So experience some may call it. But with radar, it is an exact figure. Also, visibility is not the same all around the ship, especially in rain. As such, a more exact assessment may be done by using the radar. So, safe speed, as a summary. So, you can determine what kind of speed will you exercise. These are the determinants. Draft of vessel in relation to charted depth, stopping distance and turning ability, the presence of background lighting, the state of winds, sea and the current, the state of visibility, and traffic density as well. So let's go to rule number 7, risk of collision. Every vessel shall use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions to determine if risk of collision exists. If there is any doubt, such risk shall be deemed to exist. So a famous sentence in the Master's Night Order book was, "Whenever in doubt, call me. When in doubt, call the master." So this holds true with the above. This holds true with this rule. Above rule. If the watchkeeper is in any doubt, even the slightest, he should assume that such risk exists and would have to act according to the rules. Of course, in judging such risk, he has to take into considerations the conditions at that time, the state of the sea, traffic density, visibility, etc. So, all available means to assess the risk means all that is available to the watchkeeper. Visual bearings, radar tracking, observation and plot, sound signals, VHF traffic, and the like. So in doing the above, in doing this, the chart should be studied, since this will give an indication of the course that the other vessel may be following to either head to or from a port or traffic separation scheme. So taking all of that, the watchkeeper has to judge whether even a slight risk exists, and if this slight chance does exist, he then shall note that risk does exist. So he shall deem that risk of collision exists. Proper use shall be made of radar equipment if fitted. And operational, including long-range scanning to obtain early warning of risk of collision, and radar plotting or equivalent systematic observation of detected objects. So radar is an aid. Again, I'd like to stress out, it is an aid to navigation, and its use today is mandatory and essential. The radar should be used so long as it is functional to warn the watchkeeper of the danger in as a great time interval as possible. This implies that the radar has to be used for long-range scanning to detect the ships and do a radar plot to determine whether the ship would pose any hazard or not. Further, even if the ARPA is not working, the bearing and distance of if plotted would give a fair idea of the risk of collision. The bearing may not be very accurate on the radar, but over a good period of time, this inaccurate bearing would still indicate whether such risk exists or not. Radar plotting, of course, is very helpful in assessing this situation, and this is termed as systematic observation. So assumptions shall not be made on the basis of scanty information, especially scanty radar information. So scanty radar information. If the target has been observed once in a while when the assessment is not correct, the plot is required, and then the plot has to be checked by following it up by further observations. ARPA readings may not be accurate in the first set of figures. The ARPA also keeps predicting and updating the figures. Small vessels often disappear from radar. It does not mean that the ship was never there and that it was a false echo. Target swap takes place frequently in radar. This gives rise to scanty and wrong information. So remember, after judging a vessel's track, the risk factor it has After judging a vessel's track and risk factor, it has to be keenly observed to ensure that the data and the watchkeeper has obtained is true. Uh, in determining if risk of collision exists, the following considerations shall be among those taken into account. So, risk shall be deemed to exist if the compass bearing of an approaching vessel does not appreciably change. So, as according to here, such risk shall be deemed to exist if the compass bearing of an approaching vessel does not appreciably change. This fact is the most important. If the bearing changes for a ship at an appreciable range, then the risk factor is less. However, it has to be remembered that the change of bearing has to be appreciably, or else the CPA would be insignificant, and thus the risk would still exist. A small change should therefore be viewed with suspicion, and a doubt should arise in the mind of the observer. Such risk may sometimes exist even when an appreciable bearing change is evident, particularly when approaching a very large vessel or a tow, or when approaching a vessel at close range. So, as mentioned before, the bearing change should be very evident. However, sometimes this appreciably large change may not hold true for observations of large vessels, which subtend a significant angle at the observer. If the bow was being observed and the aspect of the ship changes from end on to a side, then too the bearing change would be evident, but that does not mean that the risk does not exist. So for large vessels which subtend an angle at observer care, every vessel shall use all available means, meaning if it's a very large vessel, the radar and systematic observation that includes cause ahead of you, then you should take risk is deemed to exist if the compass bearing the same holds vessel for vessels at close range and vessels in tow. So rule 8, action to avoid collision. Any action to avoid collision shall be taken in accordance with the rules of this part, and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be positive, made in ample time, and with due regard to the observance of good seamanship. So qualification of the action. The action should be positive, meaning that it should result in the reduction of the risk of collision, not aggravated. Should be made in ample time. Should be made in ample time. Implying that the assessment should be done in time. And obviously, that means that the situation should have been observed for quite some time and from a great distance. Distance also correlates to the time interval between the time of observation, assessment, and the time of action. No daydreaming and then a wake-up call to take action. Be alert. So, good seamanship. Here, a departure may be made from the rules. If, for vessel very far on the horizon, it is seen that the vessel lies fine to starboard. Also, it is noted that for own vessel to alter course to increase the CPA would mean closing in on another danger. Then, note that she has to be at least 30 minutes into the future. The own vessel may alter her course drastically to port for some time to increase the CPA. Although it is not recommended, this action may be necessary under these circumstances, rather than land up in a situation where you have the vessel on your starboard and you cannot alter course any further to starboard. So any alteration of course and or speed to avoid collision shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be large enough to be readily apparent to another vessel observing visually or by radar. A succession of small alterations of course and or speed should be avoided. So the alteration of course has to be large enough to be readily apparent to the other vessel. So any alteration of course and or speed to avoid collision shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be large enough to be readily apparent to another vessel observing visually or by radar. So a succession of small alterations of course and or speed should be avoided. The alteration of course always has to be large enough to be readily apparent to the other vessel. Small changes are not noticeable to other vessels since the aspect during the daytime and the navigation light aspect at night may not appreciably differ from what it was before. A small alteration, of course. The other vessel then would be in doubt as to whether you have taken action or not. Panic may set in. So, regarding speed change, it is still harder to figure out when a vessel reduces from, say, 40 knots to 30 knots. It is apparent if a vessel reduces from 40 knots to directly 10 knots. If there is sufficient serum, alteration of course alone may not be the most effective action to avoid a close quarter situation, provided that it is made in good time, is substantial, and does not result in another close quarters situation. So rather than speed alteration, which is being rather difficult to observe, as such is difficult to assess the situation, and the apparent track remains the same. Thus, a course alteration is much more effective in diffusing a dangerous situation, and also is readily apparent to the other vessel, provided, however, that the alteration can be observed very easily by the other vessel. The action should not be where the situation becomes worse, so it has to be done in time, when the vessels are far away, so that the action taken can be further assessed, and if rectification is required, may be done. So action taken to avoid collision with another vessel shall be such as to result in passing at a safe distance. The effectiveness of the action shall be carefully checked until the other vessel is finally passed and cleared. So, as explained before, all actions have to be assessed after taking them. All actions should diffuse the dangerous situation, and the passing of the vessels should be with as wide a margin as possible under the conditions. So, summary, any action to avoid necessary to avoid collision or allow more than ample time to assess the situation, and due regard to the observance of goods and speed. Action taken must be pacified by stopping or reversing her means action taken to avoid collision with another vessel shall result in passing at a safe distance. This one not result in another close in waters where the effectiveness of the action shall be carefully checked the harbor until the vessel is passed. Since the ship that's why you may not have a safe distance, so that also if, that the speed may not have to be not really that effective, then you can make a correction. A vessel may head in some different. Let's go directly to the rule number 13 that talks about overtaking. So, rule 13 requires the overtaking vessel to keep out of the way of the vessel being passed. An overtaking situation exists when a vessel approaches like this one, this diagram here. So, an overtaking situation exists when a vessel approaches another vessel more than 22.5 degrees above the beam. So it does not make a difference whether any ship ahead of own vessel has permitted by signaling that overtaking may take place. So as far as the rules are concerned, especially Rule 13, the overtaking vessel is duty bound to keep clear. So a vessel shall be deemed to be overtaking when coming up with another vessel from a direction more than 22.5 degrees above the beam. That is, in such a position with reference to the vessel she is overtaking, that at night she would be able to see only the stern light of that vessel, but neither of her side light. So this part determines whether or not a vessel would be deemed to be overtaking or not. In general, overtaking is a clear-cut understanding. However, in certain circumstances, it becomes difficult to judge whether the ship is overtaking or not. So this part clarifies what is overtaking. So when a vessel is in any doubt as to whether she is overtaking another, she shall assume that this is the case and act accordingly. So again, the same instruction. When in any doubt whether a vessel is overtaking or not, it is accepted that the vessel is overtaking. So any subsequent alteration of the bearing between the two vessels shall not make the overtaking vessel a crossing vessel within the meaning of these rules, or relieve her of the duty of keeping clear of the overtaking vessel until she is finally past and clear. Being finally past and clear. So a vessel which has overtaken another but is not very clear of the overtaken vessel cannot alter her course and cross the bows of the other vessel, claiming to be a crossing vessel. If a vessel has overtaken, then the other vessel would have to be left absolutely clear, and then only the overtaking vessel's responsibility ends. But during this situation, for example, this red vessel here would like to overtake this blue vessel here. This is a special kind of situation because, as you can see, there's an obstruction on the starboard side of the red vessel. So if you are on board this blue vessel, then good seamanship would suggest that you need to a little bit give way for this other vessel because she has a higher speed, and during this situation it's not likely that she can adjust her speed immediately. So if you ask me what I would do if I'm on board this blue vessel right here, then I will alter my course slightly to port side so that I can give her a little bit of sea space here so that she can overtake me. So always be observant. Also consider the actions of other vessels and their situations. So let's go to Rule 14. Vessels inside one another, this section. Meeting situation. So Rule 14 requires both power vessels to maneuver to starboard. So this is not really very difficult. Yes. When two power-driven vessels are meeting on reciprocal or nearly reciprocal courses so as to involve risk of collision, each shall alter her course to starboard so that each shall pass on the port side of one another. So it is a clear instruction when the vessels are head-on perfectly. The thing to remember is that when the vessels are nearly or reciprocal courses, then two the vessels are asked to alter course to starboard. Nearly reciprocal course would deem that the vessels would be passing very close to each other, and the situation can become a close quarter situation when ships are quite close. Such a situation shall be deemed to exist when a vessel sees the other ahead or nearly ahead, and by night she could see the masthead lights of the other vessel in line or nearly in line. So masthead would be in line or nearly in line, and or both side lights. And by day she observes the corresponding aspect of the other vessel. So this rule is very clear about the sightings and has explained that what is to be termed as head-on. A number of cases have come about when this basic rule is forgotten and the watchkeeper relies on the ARPA to give him the CPA. The radar and the ARPA are assistances for the watchkeeper and do not replace the rule instructions. So when a vessel is in any doubt as to whether such a situation exists, she shall assume that it does exist and act accordingly. Meaning, again, the same word doubt. So even if the CPA as per the ARPA is marginal but a positive figure, the determination of head-on would still be by this rule of sighting. So always rely on your eyes. Not put too much reliance on your equipment. So let's go to rule 15, which is the crossing situation. So when two power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel which has the other on her own starboard side shall keep out of the way and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel. So this situation would frequently arise, and it is always better to avoid a close quarter situation and go right around the stern of the other vessel. Of course, going around the stern may not be practical at all times, but if the situation permits, then it should be followed if the crossing would result in a small CPA. So also, your mnemonic device right here is that if you are a vessel, this one here. If you are the given vessel, then you should see the red side light of the stand-on vessel. So it's the same as the traffic lights signifies on the streets, traffic lights on the streets. So when it says green, it means go. When you see red, it means stop. So this vessel right here sees the red side light of this stand-on vessel, then it would mean that she would stop or go around the stern of this vessel. She is the giveaway vessel. With the stand-on vessel, she can see the green side light of this giveaway vessel. So as she can see the green side light of this giveaway vessel, then the stand-on vessel should continue her course and speed. That means go. So red means stop, green means go. So if you can see this one, then if you are this vessel, then you can see this red side light. So that means stop or go around to her stern. As much as possible, do not cross her forward. So summary, rules 30 to 15, vessels inside and in of collision during head-on, meeting on reciprocal courses, masted lights in line, both side lights visible. Your action would be both vessels turn to starboard and pass port to port. During overtaking, it is deemed that you are overtaking another vessel if you are approaching her 22.5 above the beam. That's on the stern. At night, only the stern light is visible. You cannot see either of the side lights. So if you are in this situation, if you are an overtaking vessel, you should keep out of the way of the overtaken vessel. So crossing, two vessels crossing, risk of collision exists. The vessel which holds the other on her starboard must keep out of the way of the stand-on vessel. So if you see another vessel on your starboard crossing you, then you should keep out of the way. So also note that this section applies with vessels inside of one another. So meaning, if you can see in your eyes the vessel, the other vessel involved in that risk of collision, then this section, these rules should apply. If you cannot see the vessel visually, meaning you cannot see it in your eyes, you only saw it on your ARPA, then different rules should apply. So action by give-way and stand-on vessels. So give-way vessel. Every vessel which is directed to keep out of the way of another vessel shall, so far as practicable, take early and substantial action to keep well clear. So give-way vessels should take action well in time. Estimate the speed of approach between the two vessels, estimate the approximate time interval, and then take action. Do not take a late action, since this would make the stand-on vessel apprehensive, and she may then take an action which would be detrimental to both vessels. So, long before you have a close quarter situation, you should take action if you are the give-way vessel. So, Rule 17, the stand-on vessel, where one of two vessels is to keep out of the way of the other. The other shall keep her course and speed. So, this is the action of the stand-on vessel. As long as the give-way vessel takes action well in time, there is no problem. And the stand-on vessel follows this rule here. And the stand-on vessel is required not to take action, but it does not mean that she would not be alert and monitor the situation. So, the latter vessel may, however, take action to avoid collision by her maneuver alone, as soon as it becomes apparent to her that the vessel required to keep out of the way is not taking appropriate action in compliance with these rules. So the watchkeeper on the stand-on vessel has to be alert and should have been monitoring the situation as it developed. His plan of action for evasive action should be ready at all instances, since he would have to take evasive action if the give-way vessels fails to take action, or if the action is not sufficient to clear the impending danger. When, from any cause, the vessel required to keep her course and speed finds herself so close that a collision cannot be avoided by the action of the give-way vessel alone, she shall take such action as will best aid to avoid collision. So the action that the stand-on vessel finally takes to avoid the situation depends on what is the nature of the action of the give-way vessel. If the action is insufficient to clear the close quarter situation, then the stand-on vessel has to take action which will get the two ships safely away from each other. The basic fact of these rules are that although the stand-on vessel need not take action initially, she must, closely monitor the other ship and plan out actions at every step. A power-driven vessel which takes action in a crossing situation in accordance with subparagraph A2 of this rule to avoid collision with another power-driven vessel shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, not alter course to port for a vessel on her own port side. So the action that the stand-on vessel takes should not develop into a catastrophe. Rather, it should enhance the clearing action. However, the advice is not to alter course to port for a give-way vessel which is on her port side, but it is a recommendation if the situation demands. Please refer to Rule 2 and take a well-planned decision which may deviate from the above rule. This rule shall not relieve the give-way vessel of her obligation to keep out of the way. Just because the stand-on vessel has been forced to take action does not mean that the give-way vessel has passed the buck and to stand on the back to the stand-on vessel. She is still obliged as per rules to keep out of the way.